So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! The Detroit Lions have a chance this weekend to do something that they as a franchise have never done before. The 10-4 Detroit Lions are traveling on the road this week to division rival Minnesota Vikings, who currently sit second in the division at 7-7 and as the only threat to the Detroit Lions NFC North championship run. Now, this weekend, the Detroit Lions can travel to Minnesota, having the opportunity to improve to 11-4, and for the first time in franchise history, clinch a championship within the NFC North, as well as officially clinching the third seed and a playoff spot. Now, today we're going to take a look at this matchup as we have done for every week across the NFL season. Take a look at matchups, take a look at what both teams do well, take a look at what weaknesses both teams have displayed, and at the end of the day, take a look at which team should end up being the victor after Sunday's matchup and potentially who will win the division after this weekend. So with that being said, let's start off by taking a look at the Detroit Lions statistics as they yet again rank as one of the elite offenses in the NFL. After last week's performance, putting up 42 points versus the Denver Broncos with a great overall offensive performance, the Detroit Lions have jumped to the fourth best passing attack in the NFL, the second best rushing attack in the NFL, led by the two-headed monster of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, as well as jumping back up into the top 5 scoring offenses, currently ranking as the 5th best scoring offense in the league. Now, after a strong defensive performance versus Denver as well, including a first-half shutout, as well as allowing just 17 overall points to Russell Wilson and the Broncos, the Detroit Lions have statistically jumped there as well, being now the 18th ranked passing defense, the 8th ranked rushing defense, although they are the 2nd ranked rushing defense if you only factor in running back plays, as well as jumping from the 25th scoring defense to the 23rd scoring defense across the NFL. The defense is starting to become more average than it is a liability, and after a 3-game stretch of slowly building on some positives, it all seemed to come together as the Detroit Lions once again held Denver to a first-half shutout and held a pretty good offense to just 17 points on the day. Moving over to the Minnesota side of things, Minnesota ranks as the 7th best passing attack in the NFL, despite missing Kirk Cousins for a majority of the year, despite having a rotation at quarterback for a majority of 2023. They still rank as a top 10 passing attack with TJ Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and several other playmakers along that offense. However, the rushing attack has been very poor as they rank just the 23rd rushing offense in the NFL and overall rank just the 21st scoring offense across the NFL. Their passing attack has been elite, but other than that, their offense has been a little bit stagnant, partially due to injuries, partially due to play calling, partially just due to talent on the offensive side of the ball going into the rushing attack. The Vikings rushing offense hasn't been very good, and as a result, it has hurt their scoring offense overall. Their defense, though, has been significantly better this year as they rank as the 17th best passing defense, which isn't great, but considering they were the very worst passing defense a year ago, it is a nice improvement and a significant step up for where they were last year and from the defense the Detroit Lions played a year ago. They rank as the 5th best rushing defense in the NFL and overall rank as the 6th best scoring defense in the NFL. Danielle Hunter is having a career year. The defense overall is blitzing really well. They are getting a lot of pressure on quarterbacks. They're turning the football over quite a lot. And they are a very, very strong defense, despite on paper not necessarily being the most star-studded or talented unit. Brian Flores has them playing like a top 10 unit across the NFL, and the Detroit Lions certainly have their work cut out for them this week. Now, taking a look at some of the advantages both teams may have, taking a look first at the Detroit Lions, their passing attack should have a very good day, with the Minnesota Vikings being a below average passing defense in the NFL, and with Byron Murphy not practicing all week with a knee injury and potentially missing this game. I think the Detroit Lions could take advantage. I don't know if Minnesota has enough guys on the defensive side of the ball to cover Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams and Sam Laporta and potentially Khalif Raymond or Donovan Peoples-Jones, or the multitude of receivers that the Detroit Lions have. And if you do cover all of those guys, you still have to worry about Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery out of the backfield. It is a very strong offense, Josh Reynolds being another guy in there as well. There are so many weapons on this offense. I think Minnesota, especially being a little bit shorthanded with Byron Murphy potentially not playing, could have a really big problem stopping the passing attack by the Detroit Lions, especially if they're able to establish a run game early and they're able to work off the play action. That makes the Detroit Lions passing attack even more dangerous. Another area I think the Detroit Lions can really succeed in this game is the rushing defense. Brian O'Neill, their starting tackle, has been out for most of the week with an ankle injury, hasn't practiced up to Friday morning, and he is obviously a big part, if you're part of the offensive line, part of the rushing attack. But larger than that, Alexander Mattison hasn't practiced all week either, also suffering with an ankle injury. I think both of them could very much impact the rushing offense that already isn't very strong for the Minnesota Vikings. I think the Lions are going to have an opportunity to make this team a one-dimensional passing attack, really key off on that pass rush, potentially get the quarterback, whether that be Nick Mullins, whether that be Jaron Hall, and get pressure on the quarterback and potentially force some turnovers. On the Vikings side of things, I think their passing offense could also have a really good day. Any offense with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson is going to be a dangerous one for any NFL defense. And despite the great performance last week, the Detroit Lions secondary has proved in many weeks of past that they are not a great passing defense. I think Jordan Addison could have a big day. I think Justin Jefferson could have a big day. I think TJ Hawkinson could potentially have a big day. And the passing offense, despite the quarterback play, despite the injuries along the offensive line, it's not stopped them from being a top 10 passing attack. And I think that could very well continue, as Minnesota could pass a lot on the Detroit Lions and be, again, more of a one-dimensional team. But even if you know the Vikings are going to pass it, many teams have not been able to stop it. And again, the pass rush on defense should be really good for the Minnesota Vikings. Danielle Hunter is having a career year. Brian Flores has them playing like an elite pass rushing unit. They've gotten quite a few sacks. They blitz quite a bit. They are a very aggressive defense and has led them to having a lot of really good defensive performances this season. And I think that if they are able to continue that, if they do blitz a lot, if they do get a lot of pressure, that could very much play into a Minnesota Vikings upset victory. Now, taking a look at some of the impactful things about this game, taking a look at some of the injuries and some of the factors of this game, the Detroit Lions are coming into this game relatively healthy and arguably getting more healthy than they were a week ago. Jerry Jacobs is likely not going to play. He had a hamstring injury in last week's game versus the Denver Broncos, and Brock Wright is currently dealing with a back injury that is keeping him out of practice for a majority of this week. But CJ Gardner-Johnson is expected, if not likely, to return to this Detroit Lions defense in week 16 and add a much needed boost to the Detroit Lions secondary. Add another guy that could potentially cover TJ Hawkinson or Jordan Addison or even Justin Jefferson from the slot and be a guy that could be super impactful for the Lions secondary. While on the other side, Minnesota is suffering quite a few major injuries. As I said earlier, Alexander Mattison has not practiced all week with his ankle injury. Byron Murphy, the starting cornerback, has not played or practiced a majority of the week with his knee injury. Brian O'Neill has not practiced this week along the offensive line with an ankle injury. Jordan Phillips has yet to practice this week with a back injury, their starting defensive tackle. And on that note, they have two other defensive tackles that have been limited in practice all week. And then you have Danielle Hunter, who has been limited or not practicing this week, largely due to an illness that he has contracted. It is very likely that Danielle Hunter will play this weekend. He was not practicing on Wednesday, limited on Thursday, and I would expect him to be limited, if not full, on Friday. It's very likely that he does end up playing this game in Minnesota, but it is something to keep in mind that sometimes, especially this time of year and this time of season, illness can be the reason that a player misses a game, or at the very least is limited in action throughout the contest. So that is also something to keep in mind. But as the Detroit Lions get back their best secondary member and really don't lose out on too much other than a little bit of depth at tight end and cornerback, the Minnesota Vikings are potentially going to be without their running back one, their cornerback one of their starting offensive tackles, their starting defensive tackle, and potentially, although unlikely, their best pass rusher. They are suffering from a lot more injuries than the Detroit Lions, and they have a lot of more issues essentially than the Lions are facing this week, which again plays very much into the Detroit Lions' favor. Taking a look at the keys to this game for the Detroit Lions, I think it's pretty simple. It's the same game plan as last week. It's the same game plan, the same keys that the Lions really have had for a majority of the season. Establish the run early. David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs should probably combine for 35 carries and 40 touches a game at the bare minimum, whether that be receptions, whether that be handoffs, whether that be it doesn't matter, right? However, they're going to get the ball in their hands. This offense is significantly better when the running backs are having a good day, when the offensive line can lean against the defense and just power their way to a rushing attack, when the running backs are finding the right holes, when they're getting explosive plays. This offense is significantly better. I know that it is a pass happy league. I know that the Lions rank as a top passing offense in the NFL. They rank as a better run offense. And it's because the running offense that the Lions have such an explosive and such a potent and high scoring offense to begin with. No turnovers. In games that the Detroit Lions turn the ball over, they lose the football games. And typically when they turn the ball over once, they turn the ball over 2, if not 3 times a game. That puts the Detroit Lions in a hole that Jared Goff just more times than not is incapable of digging them out of. And it very often leads to a Detroit Lions loss. In 3 of the 4 losses the Detroit Lions have, they turn the ball over at least twice, and they cannot afford to do that versus a very aggressive Minnesota defense that is looking to get those turnovers early and often. And I think the biggest one for the Detroit Lions, as it has been all season, stay ahead of the chains. Get yourself into 2nd and 6. Get yourself into 3rd and 4, 3rd and 2, opportunities where you can lean on the rushing attack and you can build off of play action. As soon as you get into obvious passing situations, as soon as you get into 3rd and longs or 2nd and 10s or even 3rd and behind the chains, that is when Minnesota is going to tee off. That is when Minnesota is going to blitz. That is when they're going to get pressure and potentially when they are going to try to force some turnovers. For Minnesota's side, I think that they have to blitz and pressure a lot. Jared Goff is a very different quarterback under pressure than he is from a clean pocket. If you give Jared Goff time, he is going to find the open wide receiver. He is going to dial up something, and he is going to put together a drive where he's going to find 4 or 5 different wide receivers. He's going to involve the tight end. He's going to involve different wide receivers. He's going to involve the running backs, and it is going to be impossible to stop all the weapons that Detroit has. But if you can get pressure on Jared Goff, he panics really quickly. His eyes drop really quick. He's more than likely to take a sack than force a ball into a tight window. And you can force those 3rd and long, if not 3 and out opportunities, if you can get pressure from Jared Goff. Another thing Minnesota has to do, and it kind of plays off of the Detroit keys, is slow down David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. As high flying as this offense is, as great as Sam Laporta is, as great as Amon-Ra St. Brown is, as great as even Jameson Williams is becoming and Josh Reynolds has been, this offense is the best when their running backs are doing well. This offense drives, and this offensive engine is from the Detroit Lions rushing attack being one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL. If you can slow down Gibbs, if you can stop David Montgomery, if you can keep them from getting to that 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, or even in the 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5 range, you will have the ability to stop this offense in its tracks, slow it down, keep it from scoring points, and put yourselves in a position to win. And then from the offensive side of the ball, just trust your weapons. The Detroit Lions secondary, even with CJ Gardner-Johnson coming back, has some holes, has had a lot of communications issues this year. And even though they played a really good game versus Denver, they still allowed 2 or 3 broken plays, big opportunities, and that is where you need to capitalize. Trust Justin Jefferson when he gets one-on-one opportunities. Trust Jordan Addison when he gets one-on-one opportunities. Trust TJ Hawkinson when he gets one-on-one opportunities, because that is where you are going to win the game on offense. You're probably not going to win it in the trenches with Alexander Madison being injured, with your offensive line being hurt. So win it through the air. pass as much as you can. I know their quarterback isn't great. I know that, Nick Mullins is not the guy in Minnesota, but that is going to give Minnesota their best opportunity to put up points versus this Lions defense, move the ball against this Lions defense, and potentially put themselves in a position to win and keep their playoff hopes as well as division hopes at a very slim but alive chance. Now, overall, I think the Detroit Lions will take this. I think the Detroit Lions are a healthier team. I think they are potentially, arguably, a just better team overall on paper. Their offense has been coached to be an elite unit against a very good unit against Minnesota. And I think that their defense is finally starting to figure it out as they get healthy, as Aaron Glenn kind of got backed into a wall. He figured out that blitzing helps, that pressure helps. So if Aaron Glenn can continue to call a game like he did in Denver, I think the Detroit Lions will take this game. I don't think it'll be the highest scoring of games, but I do think Detroit can walk into Minnesota. I do think they can upset the Vikings, and I think they can walk away with a 29-25 victory, crowning themselves for the first time since 1993 as division champs of the NFC North Division. But with all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. That is my breakdown and analysis of their Week 16 matchup versus the division rival Minnesota Vikings. Let me know down in the comments below how you feel about this matchup. Who do you think is going to win? Who do you think is going to have a big game? And how do you think this weekend will end? With Detroit Lions in the playoffs or waiting another week to see what happens? I'll be very curious what you guys have to say. But with all of that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so very much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.